You are live. Good morning. This is Tammy with Trucking with Tammy. Today I have guest Desiree Wood. Desiree is the founder and president of Real Woman in Trucking. Real Women in Trucking. Let me say that correct this morning. And today we're going to talk to Desiree not just about her foundation and her organization, but we're also going to get down and dirty with Desiree the person and her beginnings, her journey and where she is now. So good morning, Desiree.
Good morning. How are you?
Cold. We got a
Oh,
lot of snow this
okay.
week.
Okay. Sorry to hear that. I don't like the cold.
Yeah, normally where I live, we don't get much, but this last 10 days, we got two huge waves of snow. So I have still not buried everything out yet.
Mm.
So, as I told you, I want to get to know you, the woman, and your start. So, way back when, before trucking, what was life like for you?
It was complex, I'll just say. I uh, ran away from home when I was 14, and I got pregnant when I was 15. So I was a single mom. I didn't have any family support. Uh, I got married kind of young to somebody you would think would be every parent's wet dream, a college graduate that, with a 4.0 grade point average. He ended up joining the Army, became an officer, but he was a wife beater. And so I left him with my kids. So I had a pretty difficult life when I was young, trying to survive with two kids and try to pay the rent and pay the babysitter and all of that stuff. And then I started working in clubs, and we had a really nice life, and we had a we're able to take vacations and live in Hawaii. I lived in Key West for a long time. I
Ooh.
traveled a lot. I had a pretty nice life considering my start. Um, uh, and so I ended up in Las Vegas around the early 2000s, late 90s, after living in Hawaii and Key West for a long time, because at that time I was working in a hotel, and I wasn't going to get any further in the job unless I had a degree. So I came to UNLV, which obviously lots of hotels here, and had like a 5-year plan and was executing that plan, bought a house, making money, you know, doing really well. And then everything just sort of like collapsed on me. I was always kind of a goal setter. And, when I set my mind to something, I do it. I get it done. I visualize it, and it happens. And this time it wasn't happening. Like everything I did just turned to shit. It's like,
Oh,
and I was like, what is happening here? So I sold my house. I went back to Key West. I bought a houseboat. Just like a whole chain of events happened, which led to like this massive depression I went into in the early 2000s. And I just even became homeless at one point. Um, and I called up a girlfriend, and I told her, I'm like, I can't function. I'd always kind of been an inspiration to my girlfriends during those years, because I was like,
mhm.
I'm moving to Hawaii. Bye. Like I just said, I'm doing this, and I did it. And now all of a sudden I couldn't do that anymore. I was like non-functioning.
So
Um,
I'm going to ask this. So, because I went through something similar in my own life where I was always fearless. And then I got to a point where I couldn't even pick out towels for my kitchen. So I understand, but
mhm.
I know what my
Yeah.
pivotal point was. What was the pivotal moment that switched you from that goal setting, fearless, determined woman to that downfall?
Well, there was a couple of things that happened. One, I think I listened to one of your earlier podcasts, and I heard you say empty nest syndrome. That was one thing. I, as a teenage mom, that I didn't have no grandma, hell, no sister, no aunt, no, I was on my own. Like my family is not anybody I can rely on for anything, never could, never have. So the responsibility, I was always like, okay, I'm going to be free on this day. And then when it
Right.
happened, I was like, what am I supposed to do? Like, all I've ever done is take care of people. And now I have, like, I couldn't, just exactly what you said. I just couldn't seem to get anything together. That was one thing. 9/11 had kind of a big impact on me. I was living here in Las Vegas and I was like, wow, like, that somebody could come here and just like do something horrible. And, like,
Mhm.
what are these people? That's always been something in my head since I was a child, is a disaster, a massive disaster that happens that makes people unable to survive in the way that they're used to. I don't know if that makes sense, but I'm looking at the fires right now. And so, are people
Yeah,
going to attack each other, or are they going to come together as a community?
both.
And so at that time, when I was like a junior at UNLV, I was a year away from graduating. I was like thinking, well, I have all these problem solving skills because of the life that I had as a single mom. So I thought, but I can't work in an office. I'll go nuts. So what will I do when I graduate? I thought I'll go to Africa and I'll give immunizations to children there or something. But when 9/11 happened, I was like, why do I want to go to another country? Why I want to do something in my country to make my country better. And so that was a big turning point for me, right there. Also, there was something eating at me, I guess you could say. There was something eating at me, and I wasn't quite sure what it is. The non-functioning part, I'm not really sure. I did go on antidepressants for a while, but I found that they were making me worse, not better.
Right.
They were making me have to, number one, pay for a very expensive prescription that I didn't have insurance for. And then I had to have them or I would have like a complete meltdown. And I was like, I can't be on pills for like the rest of my life. So that was one thing too.
Yeah. I'm not one for pill pushing. There's so many other alternatives for depression to get those, the same dopamine feelings and make you feel like you can still function. As
Yeah.
me, I was on them when I was in my early 20s when I went through a divorce, and it just made me feel like a zombie.
Yeah. I didn't like the feeling and I didn't want to have to be dependent on this thing. So that made me um, upset. And as this thing, changed, oops, my little earbud fell out. I see that what I needed was hope. I needed, I needed, I needed
A
hope
direction.
and something that interested me again. And nothing at that time interested me. And so when I got into trucking, I was like, I like this right away. Like, I love this. And suits my personality.
Okay, so we leave the hotel, we leave the college, we leave Nevada, we go back down. Where did trucking even come up?
I'm not even really sure how it popped into my mind, but when I was staying at my girlfriend's and another friend came down, they're like, "What do you want to do?" And I'm like, "I'm thinking of." So one of the parts of my personality is I've always moved. I've always moving. I'm always going somewhere. I'm always doing something new. I learn things quickly, and once I learn them, I get bored. And
You're like my
that's
twin.
So yeah, so I needed something where I was moving around, doing something hard. It was challenging every day. And that's why I like the hotel industry, is that every day it's different. But the hotel industry had changed a lot, where they wanted to make you a manager and then you're on salary so that you're working 80 to 90 hours a week. And that comes out to you making minimum wage. And I was seeing a lot of the managers taking jobs where they were tipped employees because they were making more money, which is what I was doing. So, bombshell right here. I didn't just work in the hotel industry. I was also a stripper. And
Hey,
so I had to at one time decide, do you want to have the career in hotel industry that you want to have, or do you need money right now? And so this was always a battle for over 20 years. Like, I know I'm, functioning in my mind that I could do something incredible, but I need this cash right now.
Right.
So that was like really kind of the battle. And then obviously, getting older, you got to start making a plan for the future. So for me, moving around was kind of the attraction to trucking, going a different place every day. I like the idea of climbing around in the trailer and seeing something different all the time. So that was really it for me. And so, I went to a CDL school, and that's kind of where it started.
Did we lose audio?
I don't know. Did
There we go.
we?
Okay, got it.
Okay.
That was
Did
weird.
you catch all that?
I did. I did.
Okay.
Sorry, there was it was like feedbacking there for a second. So it must have been maybe a Wi-Fi internet connection. So that's quite the change then, going from that kind of environment to trucking. Money, not, money wise, the isolation,
Mhm.
so how did you handle, that? Because when you're in the hotel industry and you're in the entertainment industry, there's always people, they're coming at you, they're invading your private space, you are constantly the center of attention, the go-to person for everything in the hotel. So now you're switching to an industry where you're isolated.
Yeah. Well, that's what I wanted because I was very high profile when I worked in clubs. I was, I literally made money off my looks for over 20 years. And people
That's a good.
followed me. I was in magazines. I was in the newspaper every week. Everybody knew me where I went. So I wanted isolation. I wanted to be anonymous. I wanted to be valued for the work that I was doing, not for my appearance. And that was something that bothered me because I think I was like early 40s. I was tired of people putting a lot of value on my appearance and not the substance of my character and my ability to do all kinds of different things. And the whole like, well, what are you going to do when you get older? Well, I'm going to get older, like I'm cool with it. Are you cool with it? Like, is it a problem for you? Because it's not a
Yeah,
problem for me.
I'm the cool
And
grandma, so
yeah, so
you know
I was ready to be alone and be with myself. And I've always enjoyed spending a lot of time by myself. So that's why I thought it would be really perfect for me because I partied. I've been to all the clubs, I've been to all the restaurants, I've been on yachts, I've been in limos. I lived that life. But I was ready to like be with what can I do? Like when push comes to shove and I'm in a snowstorm all by myself, can I figure out how to get out of it? And that was really what was important to me.
So at this point, where were the kids? Were they grown at this point
Yeah.
when you made this transition?
Yeah, my kids were grown up, being a mother as young as I was had my first grandchild by the time I entered trucking. So my kids were off doing their thing. Now I have 6 grandchildren.
Oh,
So the missing of the birthday parties when they were little, but it wasn't not my kids, but I could see that at the time I entered, it was a lot of grandmas my age, their kids were grown up. It was just them, a lot of women that just got divorced. And they were just on their own. So I felt like, all right, we're all doing the same thing
hmm
here.
yeah, yeah, and that was mine. I was an empty nester. My kids were spreading. all over.
Mhm.
And, I was getting angry. I was getting frustrated. I was
Mhm.
unhappy, emotionally. I mean, I was just cranky about it, because I had my first child. I got pregnant at 16. She is 32. My youngest is 18. I have been a mom for the majority of my life. And, having
Mhm.
four kids at home, when they left, I couldn't deal with it at all. So trucking gave me the ability to travel where they were, that
Yeah,
was an
that was a thing too. That was a thing too, is how do I go visit my kids and my friends, all these
mhm.
different places that I've lived, that I have friends and family. And yeah, that was definitely a thing. Like, I'm just going to go drive and I'll just take my time off wherever I'm at.
Yeah, you get paid. You're not
Yeah.
paying for the travel. So it was a
Yeah.
great pull for me. So
Mhm.
you got into trucking. I don't know a lot about your start. I know you as a person for the last 8 years of my career, but how did your career start?
So I went to a school in Miami. At that time, there was nothing on the internet to prepare you for CDL training, because I searched and I'm good at searching stuff, and I'm very computer literate. All I could find was one forum. I think it might have been Truckers Forum. And a girl had posted that she had a trainer and the trainer was drinking vodka, and she reported it to the company. And all the other drivers on the thread attacked her for reporting it to the company and told her she was a snitch and she shouldn't be in trucking. And I'm like, okay, this is what I'm getting into. That was all that I could find. So I started at this school, and right away I could see that people were dropping off like flies, and that they were just basically taking us down to where these old trucks were and leaving us there and say, we'll come back at 7, go figure it out.
It's like the old throw you in the lake and you'll either sink or swim kind of.
Yeah. And so we kind of developed a method between us to do the pre-trip and, work it out. And then they take us and drive around the block 3 times in an automatic in Miami. And I only got to do it like 2 times. Everybody else got to do it like 3 times, and then we tested out. So I was like, I didn't grow up around truck drivers, but my father was a commercial fisherman, and we had boats that were like over 100 feet long. So I grew up around big equipment, big engines, and my dad was safety, 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 hotel industry, safety, safety, safety. You got to know how to evacuate the hotel if there's a fire and keep everybody safe. It's very organized. Everybody's got a station, what they're supposed to be doing. And I just was like, wow, this is a really important job. And this is like really throwing these people out there. So I was taken aback by that. And they weren't really giving us a lot of clear information about what exactly are we going to be doing. Like, they weren't ever spelling it out. By the way, you're going to work 11 hours a day, or you're going to drive 11 hours a day. You're probably not going to get to shower every day. Like, they weren't really spelling out the whole situation. And they weren't spelling out the situation with the team driving either. So I ended up at Covenant Transport, and one other classmate ended up there too. And one guy, he went over to Stevens, and we all kept in touch. And when I got to Covenant, it was just like a who's who of criminal activity. Like, everybody there either just got out of rehab, jail. They were bragging about what they were in prison for. And I'm like, okay, we're supposed to all live together. So I did ask for a female trainer, which I got, which I
Back then, really?
kind of lucky. She was a non-smoker. So that was kind of the only way that they would match you up, is by whether you smoked or not, and where your geographical home time was. And I didn't have a geographical home time preference. So, I was willing to take my time off wherever. And so that was kind of it. My trainer turned out to be a pill popper. She was doctor shopping across America, speeding, yelling at me to speed like her, cruising truck stops for guys. It was just like drama nonstop. I think she was like 26, and I was like by that time in my 40s, something like that. So I just was like, you know, and I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to like get the information I need from her. But when she ran out of pills and she couldn't get any more prescriptions on the road, and we went to an emergency room and they wouldn't give her any pain meds, she wanted to go home and leave me at a truck stop. And
Oh.
I called the company and threw a fit and, you know, ended up getting into a safe. I thought she was dead at one point. I had to get another driver because I couldn't move her, and the pill bottle is empty in the trash can. I'm like, this chick is going to die and I'm going to be stuck with a corpse on the road. So I was really pissed off, and I wrote a complaint about it. And, you know, it just was like, set me on a course to be on all these different trucks with co-drivers that were worse, if not worse, some other nonsense. So I wrote the story. I wrote a story. This is when blogs were relatively new. Social media wasn't really happening. And within 9 months, Dan Rather, who a lot of people don't even know who that is now, but he was
I do.
okay. Within 9 months, Dan Rather wanted to interview me about my student trucker story and did a series of investigative reports on it. The first one called Queen of the Road. And I was asked to be in the Twitter documentary because I was going on Twitter and talking about it to get people to read the blog. And that sort of really just launched the whole thing, because I had, you know, joined this other organization, was seeking help. How do I get through this? Because I loved driving. I was like, I love this job, but why are they making me go through 6 months of hell with all these crazy people? Like, I am not here to babysit people, and I don't want to die doing this. And it just seemed like such a screwed up situation for all these people. And I was meeting a lot of people too that were in the same situation. And it was just like they were setting you up to fail. And it just pissed me off.
And even now, I still hear that, you know, those same words, you know, they're setting me up to fail. And that
Yeah.
seems like the industry has improved tremendously in a lot of areas with that, but still that same sentiment still holds today.
It's like dumb luck if you make it. And you know, and that's how I felt. It was like, you have good trainers that are getting paired up with crappy students, and then you have good students that are getting paired up with bad trainers. And if you happen to get a good student and a good trainer together, it's just like, you know, dumb luck. You know, there's no real good coordination to make sure this person's here for the right reasons and this person's here for the right reasons.
So your time away from the spotlight did not last long with that blog and then the Dan Rather series. So how many companies did you end up switching from before you finally found a home for a while?
I stayed at Covenant Transport.
Oh,
I
did you?
never left. Yeah. I did the story. They couldn't do anything to me because
How did they treat you with that?
they told everybody to not talk to me. I was treated like a social pariah. So they told everybody to not talk to me. But when I came to like the headquarters, people would come find me. And when I walked through the walls, people would pop up from their cubicle. Hi, Desiree. I saw you on television. Hi, Desiree. So I was a little bit of a folk hero, but people feared me at the same time. Like,
How
there
did
were
you?
some people. I don't care. You know, I mean, I had already been from my previous life. There's people that love you, and there's people that hate you, and there's people that are jealous of you, and there's people that go to bed every night hoping you'll die. I mean, I've lived with that for 2 decades already, so I don't really care. You know, if you don't pay my bills, I don't care, and I don't have anybody pay my bills but me. So that it doesn't bother me. What does bother me though is when people came to me for help, and I wanted to help them, and sometimes I have limited resources. So I would tell them, you know, make sure you know how to get a hold of the right people in the human resources department. Don't talk to this person, talk to that person. Watch out for this person, watch out for that person, but this person is an ally. So it was kind of like trying to find this like underground path to success. And that's what I started doing, was trying to help people avoid the bad people and find the good people so that they could get through that hellish first 6 months. And as I started doing that, and obviously through the Dan Rather thing, I was blogging, and then somebody posted about CRST. The same thing was happening over there. So then I started talking to drivers at other companies and seeing, okay, this isn't just happening here. It's happening at all the companies that have this particular business model.
Mm-hmm.
And this particular business model is the team driving students, where you're making people live together for long periods of time, unsupervised. And that made me start studying trucking and the history of trucking and how it turned into what it is today. And it just led me down this whole path that I naively thought, oh, if I just raise awareness of this, these people be like, oh, I want to help, I want to fix it. And instead what I found was pushback.
Mm-hmm.
And that motivated me more, because when you're a determined person and somebody says, you know, we already know it's a problem, move on, and they're letting people suffer and get hurt, that pissed me off.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, they can go home and sleep in their own beds at night, and they're not the ones that are having to deal with it on a daily basis. So, to them, they're not affected by it. Until people are actually
mhm.
affected by it, they're not going to make any
Yeah,
effort to change it.
yeah, exactly.
So that was a lot. So once you saw the CRST and you started doing your research, are you blogging about it this whole time?
Yeah, so I originally started blogging on a blog called truckerdesiree.com, which is still up.
Yeah, I've seen
And
that.
and so I was writing there. Now the student trucker story, I had written one button at a time on a little Palm Trio, because I started right when smartphones came out. So I was driving when the whole first smartphones came out. So there was the whole adoption period of the old timers going, I don't want it. So I had this little Palm Trio, and one button at a time I was writing this story. So it was on the Ask the Trucker blog. And the Ask the Trucker blog was Alan Smith and Donna Smith, and they had a podcast that was super popular. And so all those original posts were on that blog. And I've recently taken it down to edit it and make it into an ebook. It's just taken me forever, because I think it's still as relevant today for people to understand how CDL school goes, how the training goes, all of the different situations, not just with the people, but with the weather and the ups and downs of the money and the expectations, and then the feeling of being alone for the first time, which I don't think they put enough effort into. Once they forced you into this team driving, then you're on your own, and you're like, now I've got to manage my hours a lot differently to get parking and work within the hours of service and the ELD. So anyway, I'm working on that. But yeah, I was just doing it on the blog. I'd gone to Twitter, building the Twitter following, did the Twitter documentary, and then just like this barrage of people asking me to comment on a lot of different things. The Wall Street Journal's calling me, the New York Times is calling me, and now all of these people are calling me to comment on things on trucking. And I'm like, well, I don't want to sound like a moron, so I better research this and call on people that I know that have been in this industry longer. And so that made me really start educating myself on this industry and its inner workings.
And that's keeping you pretty busy. Is there any social life? I mean, while you're working on everybody's problems in the trucking industry, is this your entire focus at this point?
For the first few years, so I stayed at Covenant for 4.5 years. And what they did was they put me on the Walmart dedicated account, which
Oh,
was
I
kind
love
of a
Walmart.
cushy job. I think that their mentality was, let's keep her rolling, because if she's not rolling, she's not writing.
Just
That
keep
was
her out of trouble.
Yeah, yeah, and they couldn't do anything because I was a good driver. I mean, the minute I pulled the stop, the brakes, I did my logbook, and I followed the letter of the law. But yes, every time I was parked, I was writing or I was on Twitter. So they were like, "You got another load? It is a long one." So I had a good relationship. Whatever happened at the end that I left there, and one of the reasons I didn't leave is I knew you would be blacklisted. I was told I would be blacklisted. So I needed to get that 2 years of solid experience before I attempted to go anywhere. But because I was on the Walmart dedicated account, is really cushy drop and hook. I was like, I'm cool with it. I didn't take a lot of vacations. I would work 3 months at a time. I didn't make a lot of money. I decided to myself, if you're going to do this being outspoken thing, you can't, because Covenant, a lot of these big companies, they shave pay in a lot of different ways. I just told myself, you can either sit there and get pissed off because they carved a $5 here, a nickel here, whatever, what's ever going on with all the other drivers, or just focus on the work. And so that's what I did. And I learned to live on very little. And it was a good life skill to build, because I had come from a life where I could go make, a couple grand easy. You know what I mean? Like, I was going through a transition also on how to live on less. And that was a big lesson for me, because money just came before, right? So that was an important life skill that I was learning from living with less and getting to know myself and my ability. And social media was helping me have an outlet to talk, like therapy. What happened was my truck was getting retired. And so they had me come in to switch trucks, and the truck that I was supposed to take was in the shop. And during that, I slipped on algae and shattered my kneecap.
Oh, no.
And yeah, so that put me in a trauma ward and in a leg brace and out of trucking for a year. And I moved to Mexico. And while I was in Mexico, people were still contacting me. Researchers were calling me, and I was like, holy crap. But one thing that I did was I enrolled back in school to finish that college. And I did come back to Covenant, but I had some wires left in my knee that hurt really bad. So I had to leave. That was how I left, really, was because the metal they left in my kneecap was so painful. When I did return to trucking after I got those removed, I did a couple different companies. That one was furniture. They didn't get me home in time. I did one that was LTL food. They would have me switching trucks all the time. I was in like 16 different trucks, and like they're always breaking down, moved to this one. Just really kind of a screwed up company. And the winter having to chain up. And I was like, why am I doing this? Like, I have enough experience. I don't need to be chaining up, So I ended up moving down to Florida. I did some local work. I wanted to do food delivery. I wanted to know what it was like to do these different jobs. So I took time to do food delivery, local delivery, unloading. I learned to use a double loader. I had one where I was doing plants across the country, which I really liked a lot. I loved the plants and I loved my boss, but I had the opportunity to become an owner operator. It was a little crazy in the beginning, but once I started booking my own loads, I was like, whoa, this is like a completely different trucking.
It is.
And this is different. Like, I'm negotiating the rate. I'm going where I want to go. I could never work for a company again after that. Like, this is the deal. Um, and I loved it. But my trailer got hijacked. And when my trailer got hijacked, that was sort of the beginning of the end. And
That's hard to
yeah,
recover from financially.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So that was kind of the beginning of the end. I drove a little bit more after that. I did, Aldi supermarkets. I did foreign mail. I did a lot of really interesting things. I did some flatbed for a thing with Florida Power. So I feel I got a good range of stuff. But while all that was happening, I got my degree. And I started being asked to speak and do webinars and be an expert witness in court cases and get more involved in truck parking and stuff. So I started seeing different areas that my trucking experience could help truck drivers more, because I did have the boots on the ground experience. And there's really a disconnect that I know drivers see, is that there's a lot of people that are in trucking that don't know anything about the job.
Mm-hmm.
And so I felt like I need to bring this over to this group here, because there were some really good people that are trying to figure out how to make the supply chain better, and they don't have access to drivers. And so I felt like I've got to forge this path over here to bring the voice of what's going on with the drivers to people who want to figure it out also.
Okay. And while you are advocating for all the other drivers out there, how are you and your mental health? Because when you came into this industry, you weren't where you needed to be. And so now you've had all these years, you've went through all these situations on your own. You're helping all these other drivers. How's Desiree's mental health going through all this?
Well, it was hard to be, because it was always, wake up in the morning. What about this? What about that? Trucking. Going to Mexico helped me a lot. It helped me reconnect with the person I was in Key West and Hawaii, which is, I love the ocean. I love open spaces. I love walking. I did that when I was trucking. I adopted a street dog, and me and her went for long walks and went on adventures. So I was able to reconnect with things I love to do. I love riding my bike. I love swimming in the ocean and going to national parks. And I started doing that again, and I started unplugging from social media and just, looking at things. I like to laugh. I like flowers, and start doing the things that I like to do again. And during that time was kind of the rise of Instagram and other social media platforms. And I really wanted to kind of pull back. So I sort of started limiting it, and reconnecting with the real world, I guess you could say. And that's where I really just, that was the
Flourish.
thing that I needed to do for myself. I did wean myself off the antidepressants, when I started driving, and I never had to look back at that again. And I remember talking to the doctor and telling her she needed to sign off on a paper for me to get my medical card. And she was like really wanting to increase my dosage. And I'm like, no, you don't understand what I'm saying. This job is making me feel better. And you giving me a prescription is making me want to kill myself. So you need to sign off on this fucking paper right now. I was like, really, like, I'm fucking serious, because I'm weaning myself off these pills, and you're trying to cripple me. So just sign the fucking paper. And she did, and I don't recommend that for a lot. I wasn't on any serious meds, but I've seen other people do it, and it can be very dangerous. I don't recommend anybody, but I have seen that there's a lot of people that have mental health issues that have entered trucking, and it's helped them. You're so focused on the truck and staying. There's no time to let your mind wander on all this other stuff. And
Right.
that's what I think is very healing for me, at least with trucking, is that I have a very busy mind, and the truck and the road is very healing for me.
Mhm.
It puts everything in place, what I need to do next. What's the next thing that I need to do to get closer to what I'm trying to do?
Yeah, healing in my thinking time. So
Hmm.
I'm calm when I'm on the road. I can leave anything that I'm overthinking away, and I concentrate. Like, I'll be driving down the road and ideas will pop into my head,
Yeah.
lines for things I'm writing on, ideas, and I'm constantly going, Siri, open voice memo. Siri, open voice memo. You know,
Yeah,
um,
I never, people would always tell me, yeah, I always say, I solve all the problems of the world while I'm driving. And
mhm.
then when I turn off the truck, I forget all of them.
Right. That's what.
And people say you should record it. And I said, but then I won't do anything. Then I'll have all these recordings, you know?
Oh, I have a lot. I have a lot.
Yeah.
And but you use them when you need them. I mean, I literally sat down the other day and I was going through all the voice memos and I'm like, "Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Oh, when did I
Yeah.
do that?" But
Yeah.
it's great because I'm the same way. Once I park, I'm like, "What was that I wanted to do? What was that I was thinking about earlier?" So voice
Mhm.
memo is great and you can do it while driving. It's a great thing. So you go back to college. What degree did you end up getting?
Well, all of that time I was studying international business, global business, and public policy. But as the organization started happening, I called my school and I'm like, I've been doing this, like group for a while, and it seems like my life is forcing me to do this path. So, what's the fastest way I could just graduate and get out of here? So, although I had all of this global business and public policy supply chain classes that I was taking, accounting, I ended up graduating with a degree in business administration to just get out of there. And then I started a graduate program for nonprofit association management. Um, and I didn't finish the graduate program. I would love to be able to resume it. I had a class that didn't go great. I had a lot of turmoil going on in my home. And I was like, I'm going to get it. I'm just not going to finish school right now because I don't have the peace in my household that I can focus on learning right now and getting the grade that I need to get. So I put that on hold, and then the organization tasks just took off. So that'll be on the back. That's on the back burner now. But the business degree is enough to open a whole bunch of other doors for me. And I think a lot of drivers really need to understand there's a lot of other opportunities for you outside of the truck if you will just get a, a business degree, you know.
Mhm.
And it might
Right.
sound like a lot, but let me tell you that I started college in when I was 37. I had a sixth grade education. I never even did division or percent. I had to take all these remedial classes just to get to college level math and English. It is possible just one step at a time. And it does open a lot of doors for you to stay in trucking when you can't drive anymore. And
Which is
I
a
was
real
just,
concern. I mean, yeah, we all
yes,
have that line where we can't drive anymore.
yeah,
It does
yeah.
happen. And a lot of schools now are online, so
Hmm.
you can get a full degree online in your truck. I am currently working on my bachelor's from the truck mostly, and on my off days. I like
Right.
you. I did graduate high school, but college for me has been very random and um I've had classes here and classes there, and I was working on my bachelor's in psychology, and then I was only a couple classes away, and then life happened. I went back and I switched it to business admin with human resources. Um,
Right.
some of my credits transferred, not all. Um,
Yeah.
so I'm working on that, but it's available online. You
Yeah.
know, IT is really big right now.
Hmm.
And a lot of drivers need to look at what was I was researching the new autonomous training that's out there.
Yeah. 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 They had an ad for that. I was at my friend's house in Tucson, and they have like the little weekly local paper, and they had an ad for people to work on autonomous, and then you had to have a CDL. And I'm like, why are they advertising this here where no drivers are going to see it? Like,
Because that's where they are studying the actual autonomous
yeah, but you're not going to
driving
get
up.
a CDL driver, the randomness of picking up a local newspaper, like advertise it where the drivers are. And that really showed me kind of the disconnect of, um, you know, credible educational institutions that are studying things relevant to trucking, engineers that are really smart, but they don't have any access to an actual driver to brainstorm with. And so now like I've talked to MIT, I talk to engineers a lot. I look at plans. I get sent plan. I'm like, this isn't going to work because the trucks doesn't turn this way to park in this kind of a space. But like, I'm sort of a unicorn, and I'm like, drivers really need to know that there's a lot of opportunities for them if they continue their education while they're in the truck like you're doing. And it doesn't matter if it's all over. I used to worry about the same thing because I moved, went to this community college, went to that community college, went to this 4-year university, and now I'm on the road. I finished with University of Maryland online. Just do it, because 99% of winning is showing up. And that's what I saw going to college is they want you to just, if they tell you to write a 20-page paper with citations, yeah, it sucks, but you have to finish it. It's following through. It's learning how to do the format. It's not like there's like one correct answer and you're bad. It's the process of starting something and finishing something with the
Correct.
instructions that you were given.
And with these new autonomous trucks, and I'm just going to say this out there because I've been researching it. The typical truck driver that we have today is not the trucker of the future.
Right.
Everything I was reading was very degreed certifications, engineers, CAD. There was a lot to these autonomous trucks, very extensive training. And if you want to remain in the trucking industry, you are going to have to change with it.
Yeah.
And that is having a degree, certification, and training in these IT departments, engineering, because that's what it's going to take to drive these autonomous trucks. They're not just going to take a CDL.
No, what I mean though is like we just had Real Women in Trucking was asked to sit in a work group with some engineers from a study group. I think they're from Virginia Tech, whatever. And we were asked by Steve Vaselli, who wrote a book called The Big Rig: Trucking and the Decline of the American Dream. He's a labor sociologist. He was also a truck driver. And I have come to know Steve over the years. In fact, he knew me when I saw his book came out. I wrote him and I'm like, hey, I've been writing about all this stuff about truck driver training. And I saw your book, and he goes, hey, I know who you are. I've read your blog. So he already knew who I was. And he's been trying to raise this alarm about what autonomous trucks are going to do to the labor market. So he asked us, Real Women in Trucking, to sit in with some engineers that are testing some autonomous trucks up in winter conditions. And they were, telling us some of the things that are happening with them. And we were telling them, this is what we've been saying all along, because what happens in winter with these sensors, you can make a truck drive in pristine infrastructure, but we don't have pristine infrastructure. That's not reality. And winter, you drive through a blizzard and there's, ice chips all over everything that's glass. So if you're relying on a sensor, what are you going to do? Get out every 5 minutes and climb up on top and clean the sensor off, and it's going to get dirty again, like they're going to malfunction. So
Right.
all of the things that drivers have expressed concerns about before they started all this crap are happening. Um, you need to have real world experience and all of that stuff, but also just to be at the table to have the discussion with that person, and be able to articulate it in a way that they can understand it. This is the reality of it. It's really important. So I really just hope more drivers will see the value and continue your education. If you love this industry and your body can only take so much.
Right. Exactly. I know.
And,
I'm at that point myself.
yeah,
So
your body
yes.
can only take, and then reality sets in. So I started with one grandchild. I have 6 now. I missed pretty much everybody's birthday parties. I just went to my granddaughter's she graduated to go to high school. That's the first one I've ever been to. I'm like, all these years pass so fast, and you get to a
They
point
do.
where you're like, I don't want to miss any more of that stuff.
Right. So I don't want to go on too much of the autonomous because I want to do a whole segment on that. So I would like to invite you back to discuss autonomous at a later date, because there's a lot of information that I want to put out there that's not out there as widely as it should be with truckers. But going back, so when you were talking about getting involved in you keep saying the organization and the group.
That group.
Where did this group? What was this group that started back then?
So I went to CDL school in 2007, and I'm on the truck with this female trainer that's, popping oxys and driving. And we're driving, I think we were driving in some place. It was a snowy, and I saw this sign, women in trucking. And I'm like, oh, there's an organization for women truck drivers. I'm going to join it as soon as I get home. And I did. And I joined the organization. And then when I started having all these horrible experiences, I was on a truck with a guy that basically wanted to tell me about how great he would be in porno and to all this, hitting on me. And I was like, dude, I'm old enough to be your mother, like quit, stop. And started getting very aggressive with me, up to the point where he got it up in my face. And he was like, I just want you to know I would never force you to have sex. And that triggered in me some uncontrollable shaking, that I could not operate the truck. It was my turn to drive, and my body started convulsing. And I said, I can't do this. I got to get off this truck. Got on another truck with a guy, ended up being left out in the desert, bleach sprayed on me. So every time these things were happening and I'm reporting them to Covenant, they're coming after me. Like, well, you seem to be the common denominator. Well,
Yeah,
I
I'm a
came to
woman.
find out. Yeah, I came to find out these guys had multiple complaints against them, but they were coming after me. And that turned a switch on me. So I was going over to this new organization that I joined and saying, this happened to me and I don't know where to get help. I also wrote to Alan Smith, the Ask the Trucker blog. Like, I really want to do this job. I feel like I'm being set up to fail. And I'm like in my 3-4 month part, and I didn't know where to turn for help. Women in trucking just attacked me, just like, you must have done this. What did you do? You mother. Like, I was like, holy shit, like, whoa, what the fuck? I was just taken aback by how they came after me for complaining. Now, later I found out that's how they got rid of people that complained about this.
Mm-hmm.
And I was told by one of their original directors, you're not the first one that came here and talked about this. You just would not go away. And I just found it very fucked up. So me and
it hasn't changed though.
It hasn't changed. It's like a false front, a Hollywood.
Yeah.
So I grew up in Southern California. Okay. I grew up around movie sets. I've known actors and acting, and what's on fire right now is where I grew up. So it just revealed to me women in trucking is the false front of a movie set. There is nothing behind it. And it frightened me that they were actively covering up rape that was happening at companies. And they were companies that sponsor them, corporate sponsors. And then we were actually told at one point, yeah, we're grooming them to be, corporate apologists, basically. So I was like, wow, this is so fucked up. So me and a couple other women had written these 32 questions to Ellen to get her to answer. Are you for the drivers or are you for the carriers? Because they would never be really clear. They always wanted to hang their leg on both sides of the fence to the companies, use the picture of women truckers to say, look at us, we're women in trucking. But in reality, to the truck drivers, it's like, we want your picture, but fuck off. And, it's about dispatchers. It's about, female executives. Every time they would go to Washington, D.C., I was like, are they going to bring up the bad training? Are they going to bring up, the
Which is
rapes
still
that are
up
happening?
with me.
And no, they weren't. It was like, take a picture with our doll so that we could sell more dolls, And so we wrote this letter. We got her to answer. That was the first blog post on Real Women in Trucking. It was an informal protest group from 2010 until 2013. And that's when I was recovering from a second surgery on the knee, sat down with a book, how to make a nonprofit, filed the paperwork, became a real nonprofit. And the minute we became a real nonprofit, companies started calling me wanting to sponsor us. But I was like, okay, if I just take the money from whatever company so that they can have a check mark on their box, I'm just like her.
Right.
So that's where I have to decide.
Right. So who was your starting group? Who was in your initial
So the person that wrote the original letter was named Heather Rose, and she was actually a trans driver, a third generation truck driver. And she wrote the original 32 questions. The original board members were me and Sandy Talbot, Idella Hansen, Tracy from the CRST case. There was part of the CRST.
The very famous case.
The very, very big one. And
for those of you that don't know, Tracy sued CRST for the sexual harassment and rapes that were going on at CRST, along with how many women? There were 7?
There was originally in that case 265 women, something
That's
like
not,
that. 207.
Okay.
Then it got knocked down to, now a lot of this is documented on my truckerdesiree.com blog, because she posted there. She's like, I'm from CRST. Mine was excused. And who we found was the safety guy who also posted on the blog from Oklahoma that backed up her story. So he's in the Dan Rather, that first Dan Rather show. His name is Tom Hansen.
Yeah. So it's a very big case that happened back when.
And it started with somebody named Monica Stark. Anyway, it went on and on and on. It got dismissed. The EEOC did a lot of not bad things. They kept putting cases in after the fact. They did a lot of missteps, which ended up doing a huge misjustice to the women. There were 13 women. The judge wouldn't let the 13 women testify for the one woman because they didn't all have the same trainer, even though they all had the same experience. There was a lot of shit that went down on it. Then another lawyer came in and picked up the individual cases and tried to take on some of those cases. They were making a lot of good progress, but then another judge came in and dismissed it. That law firm, Josh Friedman, there's a lot of videos on our YouTube channel of them talking about that case. It was just a lot of shit going on. At the same time, you had the Prime discrimination case happening, the CR England rape case happening. So there was stuff going on at all these different companies, but it was all the same stuff.
Yep.
And it was pretty clear it was, a way of doing business. And they're making money by saying, look at us, we're bringing all these women into trucking. But they're not talking about how many are not making it and being traumatized for life. And
23%. If you want to know, I looked this up. 23% of women leave trucking for sexual harassment, discrimination. They don't feel safe.
No, they don't feel safe. Why should they? We have an industry where you could rape somebody and then still have a job,
And still
or
be training and bring in other
and
women
still be
into that
trading.
environment. Yep.
You just dump the girl off and say she can't drive.
Mhm.
That's like the death nail in your coffin for somebody to say you can't drive. They don't want to hear anything else about you. The
So you're Go ahead,
CR
sorry.
England rape guy, he went to jail. The CR England guy is like, the heat was high on him. So he walked across the street 5 miles down the road, got a job with Watkins Shepherd, got a verification of employment, and he's driving again. So it's very clear that people that do this, rapists, predators, they can go from one company to another company, and they generally go to training companies because
Mhm.
they have access to fresh meat and they know nobody cares. So they can blend right back in the population. So this guy, he's been in jail for 5 years. He's getting out this year. We have nothing in place to take his CDL away right now.
So he can
And
go
then,
back to a company that allows felons
yep, allows
to come in.
felons and be a train and say, I'll be a trainer.
So you started your organization with some pretty big headliners then. You were making waves all across trucking. You're out in the spotlight. Tracy's in the spotlight as well at this point. So you have a lot of people that are in the news starting your organization.
Yeah. And it took a toll on all of us. We had a lot of journalists wanting to do ride alongs. We got approached for a lot of television shows. Of course, they wanted us to just be bozos and sexualize us and, the sexy trucker that drives all day and, picks up a different guy every night. So we had to like really be on our toes to
Be
sometimes
professional. Mhm.
sometimes shit can the plan, and uh, Tracy had a hit job piece done on her that really hurt her feelings. So she was like, I don't want to do this anymore. All of us, it's taken a toll on us doing all these interviews and putting our lives out there to just say, this is the good, the bad, the ugly. My life is not perfect and stuff. Michelle Kitchen got involved. She's been really like my right hand because she's tough. Deb Dingo. And it has taken a toll on all of us because we don't want to be out in front. We have, Idella lost a child when she was younger. She lost her daughter a couple of years ago, who was a very active supporter of real women in trucking. We've had stuff going on in our family that had taken a toll on us. And then sometimes you have women that seek our help that they kind of get obsessed with us, like they want to be like, they want like every single day, and it's really hard, then with the
Exhausting,
rise,
draining.
it is draining. So it made me start hiding, and just checking out more, having anxiety attacks, like some people you can't please. Then there's a lot of people that want to spread you into all of these different issues. So we had to like kind of like circle wagons and say, okay, we got to stick to like our core issues and stuff, because really we don't have the funding like women in trucking. They're bringing in over $1 million a year. And what are they doing? They're having parties and making dolls and stuff, but they're not. When we started the protest group, we were trying to push them to do their job. We didn't want to do it for them. I didn't want to be in charge of shit. I've been in charge of something my whole life, So we were only trying to put a fire under their ass to do the job they said they were doing. And then now we're having to do it on a shoestring. And then we started seeing them come back into the picture and try to take credit for the work that we were doing and taking our talking points and adopting them. And for me, part of me was like, okay, now they're doing their job. But then it gets to the implementation part, and then they bail. So we watched them monetize the issue, get it to right here before implementation, and then they're on some other nonsensical bullshit. So we had to like stay with it, and it has been exhausting. It
I
has
imagine.
been draining. Yeah. Yeah.
So you took this protest group and you formed, all you ladies get together, you formed this Real Women in Trucking organization, nonprofit, and you have sponsorships coming at you, and you're saying no. You're saying we are actually going to, we don't want the fluff. We want serious change.
Mhm.
And how did the industry handle that?
So we had US Foods. They were like one of our first, this one lady, but at the time that we had to like say, we're not going to have any more corporate money because we don't want to be a checkmark box. So we had this one US Foods. I was talking to all these different, a lot of companies that were calling me. Sometimes I'd have to say, realistically, your job sucks. Like, I don't, like realistically, even if you, and people would get mad at me and they'd be like, well, what if they've got Walmart, what if you get Target? Well, Target's doing kind of, the same, they're taking the student fleets. I mean, ideally, companies would take a look at their supply chain rotation and say, we're not going to take any more student fleets because we know what's going on there. We're going to pay a little bit more to have an ethical company. How do we get an ethical criteria? And that is just not a word that you hear in trucking. Ethics and trucking are
Do
not,
not go
no.
hand in hand. No.
So then we said, well, what about law firms that are going after companies for discrimination, sexual assault, wage theft? So that's how we supported ourselves for a really long time, was law firms that were trying to fight for the rights of drivers. And and then when the pandemic happened, like the skids came, on everything. We did get some COVID money that supported us for a couple of years. And then we got a Cypre award. We had started Truckers Emergency Assistance Responders to help drivers that get stranded on the road. And we got a Cypre award, which is when a big class action lawsuit happens and they can't find all the class members, the money sits in the bank for a certain period of time, and then it has to be given to a nonprofit that has a mission that is similar to what the case is about. So we had gotten a large Cypre award for TIER, which is the acronym for Truckers Emergency Assistance Responders, and from the Navistar class action, where the engine
Where
was,
the bad engines. Yeah.
the bad engine. And that supported a lot of activities for TIER. We were able to do a whole bunch we got some money during COVID to give care packages to drivers from a lot of different companies. And then when all of that ran out, basically it came to us. Michelle and Idella have given a lot of their own personal money to keep things going. I work 7 days a week. We've had a lot of members retire from driving. And as we've gotten FMCSA to start actually taking this issue seriously, we have wanted to like back away, but we have to see it through. So right now, just trying to keep it all together. So the work I do, consulting, expert witness, that money goes to Real Women in Trucking to fund our activities. I was only able to pay myself a salary maybe 2 years in the 15 years we exist. So and it wasn't really, it was still under the poverty level, but it was enough to take the heat off of me. So we really fund a lot of it ourselves, and we were like, if you do the math on the membership, you got to have a lot of members to support the activities we did. In the meantime, but this is what I learned from it. We started the Queen of the Road Awards. What we learned is it doesn't really take that money to have a huge impact. And these organizations that are bringing in the money, they are completely fucking over a lot of people. Sorry for my French, but it's the truth.
Yeah.
It only takes really 10 or 15 people that are on it all the time, making phone calls, writing letters, going to meetings, showing up in person to make a huge difference and impact. And that's what's lacking. And so people need to hold these associations accountable.
Right. Well, most of the associations, women need to feel like they're a part of something. Not all of them are advocators. They're just they're groupies.
Yeah. And that's a hard thing because we've had that too. We've had people that they get a little obsessed. They get a little fixated on one of us, and then if you're not there for them at the drop of a hat when they call you, then you're a bad person, you're a horrible person. But the truth is some people want to be involved for the wrong reasons,
Yeah. Well,
and
I
they
I just want to put
have
this
to
out
know
there.
the
If
cost.
anybody wants to be my groupie, I am horrible at returning text messages and phone calls. You can ask my best friend. She may not talk to me for months. So
And
be
I'm the
warned.
same. I love I have great girlfriends that I've had for like over 30 years, but they know me. Like I show up when I show up, and
Yep.
I always love you. You're when we're together, it's like we were never apart, but I'm just not a phone call person, and I'm
And
just not a
I'm not a fluff person. And I
Mhm.
text with you, so I have very short texts. I
Yeah.
am short, blunt, and to the point.
I'm
Um,
all business, and I know that it
yeah.
gets on people's nerves. I mean, I've had people that were in our organization call me, "She likes you. You're the flavor of the month," they would say. And then she doesn't. And here's my thing, if you're helping the cause, I'm all about you. But when you want to start talking to me about what so and so's doing over here and what color, I tune out. Like I don't have time for that stuff. I'm all business.
Yeah, and I'm not a follower. So I'm not gonna get on
Mhm.
your little follow train and be your little
Yeah.
girl. No, I'm a leader. I go my own way. My drum beats to my tune and my tune only. So I
And I love that. I love being around leaders and people that are doing their own thing, and they are self-driven, and those are the kind of people. Now, I do wish that I could get more people to coalesce around this one issue because it's a difficult topic. And going back to an earlier question, why I took it the reason I stayed on it, because I knew it was such a difficult subject matter for people to talk about, that nobody was going to talk about it and get down to the nitty
down and
gritty. And
dirty.
it,
Right.
it needed to be said. The words
Yeah.
need to be said.
So we're going to get into your issues here in a minute. What I want to tell our listeners today is, so after all these years of being a trucker, getting into these organizations, getting your education, you actually took a job.
Yeah.
You bailed on us in the trucking industry, and you are enemy number one.
No, not. I'm still tell everybody I'm a truck driver.
So you took a job with Nevada's DOT.
Yes, I did.
Correct. So what's your role at DOT?
I,
What do you do?
I am a transportation planner analyst of freight.
So she's not at the weigh station, y'all. I just want to
No,
put that
I'm
out
not.
there. Which, if
No.
she was, she'd probably hammer you. Just saying. But I would. I would hammer some of them.
There's certain ones I'd be calling in if I did that. No, I'm not in that division. I can't talk a lot about my job, you know.
But you don't have to. Just
But
what you do. Yeah.
I part of my job is to work with the Nevada Highway Patrol, oversize, overweight, and there's things that they're trying to get done to modernize their facilities for Nevada.
Right.
What I look at is truck parking and projects that will make the freight move smoothly and efficiently through our state, and hopefully as a multi-corridor partner with our neighboring states. So that's my job, to look at that as a whole. And what I always do is bring it from the eyes of a truck driver.
Right.
And yeah.
So you as a truck driver and being on the other side of it, it does make you look at things a lot differently,
Hmm.
having the experience of both.
Yeah, it does, because now it's easy to say they don't know what it's like out here. You know, these paper pusher, pencil pushers. I've said it myself, you
Mhm.
know, moving papers around your desk. Now I'm having to see how slow things move. When you have a new administration, a lot of people change positions. No, you have to wait for all those people to learn what the job is that they got themselves into and see if they're going to stick around and do it. That's probably the biggest challenge right there. And it's complicated to win people over to freight. And it's almost come full circle for me because um, I'm dealing with a lot of policy now, which is what I ended up going, when I started out in college and somehow went on this other path and came all the way around back. And now I'm coming back to policy and global business and how that all works. But I'm also dealing with people who think complete streets is the most important thing, and scooters and bicycles and bike paths, and how to get them to see that freight is critically important to everyone. And ironically, one of the very first interviews I ever did, it's still on YouTube, was with Overdrive magazine, Todd Dills. And I was telling him how truck parking, because it doesn't have its own set aside funding, has to compete with other projects in
Mhm.
transportation. And so there has to be more advocates to explain why truck parking is important, because you're up against people that want walking paths who can actually show up to meetings in person, to city commissioner meetings, and win, because there's
Right.
no truck driver there to say, but wait a minute,
Wait,
isn't it
wait,
more
wait.
important that you have your stuff at the store?
Right.
So I said that in this interview with Todd Dills all those years ago, and now I'm living it in my job, where I've got to be in a meeting with all these different groups that are like, this is important, that's important, this, and I'm like, but wait a minute.
Us too. So that
Yeah.
that yeah, and that's very important. Which also comes into play with the core issues that you are dealing with on the Real Women in Trucking side as well.
Yes. It I mean, it's important to understand that I started the Real Women in Trucking for the sexual assault and the bad training issue. What happened from my activity on Twitter was getting asked all these questions from journalists, because the only truck driver they knew was Trucker Desiree on Twitter. I was one of the first female truck drivers in social media. So I didn't follow other truck drivers, they followed me. But journalists and elected officials and people that were doing stuff are who I followed. So when people from magazines and articles would say, what about this trucking issues? One of the things they said was, what do you think about this guy, Jason Rivenberg, that was murdered when he was trying to park? And I read the article and I was like, oh my God. And I started talking about truck parking, which led me very quickly to meet his widow, Hope Rivenberg. And she was going around trying to get petition signatures. I don't know if everybody knows this story, but for me, it was heartbreaking. She's pregnant with twins. Her husband shot for $7 that was visible on his dashboard while he was staging to deliver at Food Lion a load of milk. The teenager kills him for the $7, and she gives birth to the twins 14 days later in a murder
Sad.
trial, and is trying to collect petition signatures to raise awareness of the lack of truck parking for truck drivers at county fairs. And I'm just like, she already has a 2-year-old. I'm just like, okay, she just lost her husband. She's got 2 infants and a toddler, and she's out there by herself. So I started sharing the petition on Twitter. Ask the Trucker, Alan Smith and Donna Smith mobilized a movement. The bill became a law. It was incredible. We got so many people on Twitter to help us.
And
That
The law is what? What? Tell them what the law is now.
The
Jason's
law
law.
is Section 1401 of the Moving Ahead for Progress Transportation Bill, Jason's Law. You can Google it. It is the law of the land. It made truck parking an eligible activity for funding when states included in their freight plan. Here's the thing. Before Jason's Law, states just got money for transportation. Okay. And then they all fought over whatever, and they got Jason's Law made them now have to make a freight plan and study truck parking. So now all these states are like, what's a freight plan? How do we do it? What's truck parking? Why do we need it? So you have all these people that have worked in state DOTs that now have to do a new job that they've never had to do before, and they don't even know where to begin to do it. That takes time. So that all was around 2011. We went to all the meetings, Real Women in Trucking. I went to every single meeting that Federal Highway had. And I made a lot of connections during that time, which is kind of what led me to the job that I have now, but got very involved in this truck parking thing. And from going to those meetings, the more I went, the more I learned that people really wanted to solve this problem, but they didn't really understand the behavior of truck drivers, over the road truck drivers. So I began doing consulting. There's a study that's coming out in spring that we've worked on to really get down to the nitty gritty, to teach people that work on this problem why we need to park, what we need to do when we're there parked, the things that we need. People didn't realize that we do our laundry on the road. They didn't understand that there was no toilet in the tractor. Nobody told them this.
So
People
they thought we
didn't ever.
had. So they
They
thought
thought
we
it
were
was like
rolling
an
with an RV.
RV. Yeah. So, I mean, and I always tell them, we have autonomous trucks on the road, but nobody's ever thought, let's put a toilet in the semi. They already have an RV dump at all the truck stops. Like, what's the problem here? So there was so much to connect the dots that needed to happen over these years. And so that really led me into getting really a lot more involved in the truck parking, was Jason's Law and Hope. And so Hope gave birth to the twins. She remarried. The twins are now teenagers. There's a lot of people that have been working on this issue behind the scenes that the drivers have never seen. But the driver behavior too is there's always new people coming in. Mm-hmm. Nobody teaches them how to find other alternatives besides big chains. They're sort of taught to just go where you get your fuel points and never go anywhere else. And
right.
Yeah. But over time, when you become an experienced driver, you're like, okay, I'm going to take my shower in the afternoon when it's less crowded. And then I'm going to go park at this little hiding spot that I have that's very peaceful that I'm not going to tell anybody about. And you learn that over time. Or this old mom and pop place that has a great restaurant and a gigantic parking lot that you can get a spot any time of the day, 24 hours. Those are the little hidden inside grapevine things that you learn over time that's not taught. And there's a lot about living on the road that we don't teach the new drivers. And because they're always coming in and cycling out, you always have this churning problem over here.
Right.
That,
with parking. Yeah. So we have the core issues with Real Women Trucking. You have the sexual assault and the trainers. You have the parking. What other core issues are you guys focusing on right now?
What has sprung up in the last year and a half, 2 years is hiring discrimination. There's just a lot of companies that are not hiring women, period, end of story.
Which is weird because they keep saying they're trying to increase the percentage of women. Where I work, there are not very many of us women drivers. The terminal I work at, I am actually the only woman driver, and it hasn't been easy. But yeah, so it's crazy to think that, we are trying to increase the number. We are trying to advocate. We are, advertising for women. We are pro woman. But when it comes down to it,
no, they say whatever they want, and they make a lot of money. They make a lot of money telling, and these companies don't check out anything. They just like, this is our women. Same with Truckers Against Trafficking. A lot of companies are like, they're the companies, they're not even good companies. And they're like, they'll support truckers against trafficking. This is a great cause, but they don't want to clean up their own house. And they're like,
Yep.
well, we have our checkmark women's issue over here.
Hmm.
And
It
so
looks good
there's a
for
lot.
PR. That's all they
Yeah,
care
it
about.
looks good for their marketing, but they're all full of shit. All these companies that are on the best women to fleets to drive for, it's like a joke, like, no, they're not. So it's all pay to play. It's a bunch of total nonsense. It's very confusing for women because somebody who's wanting, like we used to be when we were single moms, looking for a job that they could make a nice life for their kids, is seeing, I'm going to be a truck driver. And then they get in the CD and they don't realize that these companies are making money off of you. You're a little dollar sign for them when you enter trucking because they get a tax credit for you because you're minority or you're just whatever it is. I got a list of tax
Low
credits for you.
income,
Yeah,
displaced worker.
dislocated worker, all this stuff, and they're getting all these grants and government money. But at about the 3 or 4 month mark, they don't care about you and you're on your
Right.
own. So you're in this space where you're not insurable yet, and you're just that far from, being, and you just can't find a spot. So the discrimination, we're seeing a lot of companies just saying they have a waiting list for women. They're not hiring women. That is illegal. It violates the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Title VII. So if anybody's experienced that, please call us. There's a few
Yes,
companies that
please.
we're
Yeah.
going after on that. Retaliation and blacklisting. We're having a lot of women, and this goes on with a lot of drivers, but women need to really pay attention. When you leave a company and you had a little fender bender, they put it on your record as a preventable accident. I mean, it's really hard to get that off. Abandonments,
So I had to
now.
fight an incident. And I didn't even have an incident. I had a guy who got mad because I had to merge in construction. He was behind me, but you know how cars, when you're merging, they try to go around you. He couldn't go around me. He called the company and said that I broke his mirror off. Okay. The company sent a message on my navigate on my what do we have back then? I am sitting in traffic next to the SOB with his mirror intact, not even a scratch on it. I have a message from safety about it. I can't take a picture of it because I'm driving and I'm in traffic or I will get fired. There's nothing I can do. The guy's just mad, woman driver. He's going to
Mhm.
be, he never sent in any proof, but yet they put it on my record. And I had to fight that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't easy.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, once somebody puts something on your record, I mean, I'm really lucky because I followed but I had a guy one time, he was cutting me off and being a real asshole on the road. And I flipped him off. I was like, fuck you. He called my company and I called my company. I said, this guy, he goes, he already called me. Don't worry about it. My boss was cool and stuff, but there are people out on the road like that
Yeah.
that
Well,
are
and
just assholes, and they
yeah.
have nothing to do but just try to be,
And the
a
safety
dick.
department doesn't care. Oh, we got a call, so it doesn't matter that there's no proof. You're still getting it. Why? I
Yeah.
mean, I was on the phone saying, "Hey, I'm next to him." Oh well, there's nothing you can do about
Yeah.
it.
Women have to be really cover your ass.
Yeah.
If you're leaving a job, take a picture of all sides of the truck to prove there's nothing, wrong with the truck, that it's where they want it. I mean, these
Oh,
companies will
absolutely.
screw you every way to Sunday, to make sure that you can't get another job. So you really have to watch yourself, especially in those early years when you don't have enough solid experience to get to the next job. So I see a lot of that. So that's one of the issues that we're kind of dealing is trying to teach women about this before and how to, go and fight it with higher rate and stuff like that. There's not
Right.
enough women that know that they don't have to drive in dangerous conditions. It's winter
Oh,
weather.
yes.
Surface Transportation Assistance Act. We put a number of videos on our YouTube channel about that. Paul Taylor, Truckers Justice Center, specializes in that. But you need to know how to report it. There was a very big case that he did, Cynthia Ferguson, against Prime. And she was saying, it's not safe to go And they fired her for not going, and she won that case. It was a significant settlement. Cynthia Ferguson has passed away, but her case lives on, and it's really important for women to know there's other women that pave the path for you.
Yes, exactly.
And you need to know about the sacrifices that they made so that you could be doing this job. And please arm yourself with knowledge.
Right.
If a company's telling you to drive in a blizzard and it's not safe, you're the captain of the ship, and you need to know how to say the magic words to them, because they don't teach these
Safety concern.
dispatchers. They incentivize them to get you to keep moving. They don't care if you die. The freight's insured, the truck's insured. And
And it's your CDL and your job and
your
your
CDL, your
livelihood.
job. And the truth of the matter is, if you die on the road, they're not going to bring your body back for your family. Your family's on their own to figure out how to bring your body back. So you have to think about yourself, because they're thinking about themselves.
So
So
I
those are
always
our
tell
core
women,
issues.
yeah, I always tell drivers, first of all, if your dispatcher or somebody calls you and gives you a hard time, first words out of your mouth should be, send it to me in writing.
Yes, absolutely. Do
Send it
not
to me in
answer the
writing.
phone.
Yeah.
Don't answer the phone. They're calling you because they know there's no record. As soon as they start calling you, they're trying to get you to do something that's illegal.
Yep. And once they send it to you in writing and you say it's a safety concern, it's their job on the line. So you have to make sure you cover CYA. Cover your
It's
rear.
like hot potato. I always think it's like hot potato. They say something to you and you say something back to throw the hot potato back in their lap, it is not safe to do that.
Right.
And the word safe is the word that you need to, because it is about highway safety.
It is. And if you don't know, a lot of people don't realize Warner had a huge lawsuit a few years ago where there was a newer driver driving in bad weather. There was an accident across the median, but the car came across the median, hit the truck. The truck was nowhere near where the accident started. But because the truck was out in inclement weather and it was just there, the accident was more severe and the injuries were more severe. And the driver of the car won a humongous lawsuit just because the truck was there, even though the truck had nothing to do with it. So even when you're not at fault, even when you're nowhere near and you just get ran into, in today's society, you are still at fault.
Yeah. If you're a CDL driver, you're going to be the one that gets left holding the bag.
Yeah.
And the companies are not, everybody goes running for the hills, and you're the rogue driver, and you need to think about that.
Yeah, you're the one that's going to take the fall. It's going to be your name in the news all over the place. It's going to be, oh, why were you there? Why did you do it? And nothing you say is going to matter because you were the one behind the wheel and that made the decision to do it.
Exactly.
So
So
yeah.
So that's about it. I'd mentioned two other things that we've been working a lot on our website is the independent contractor rule.
I'm going to send you a text, by the way. I got I was going to message you about this. I got a text message this week about a job offer. And it was so much cents per mile, and it was $10.99. And I read it and I responded, and I'm like, is this a lease purchase? And they're like, no, company driver. And I was like, how did you get my number? And they're like, you applied. I'm like, no, I haven't applied to anyone. And they're like, I don't know. We'll take your number off. But I have the text message, the company name, the recruiter's name and number, and they are recruiting illegally $10.99 for a company driver position.
There's so much abuse happening in the industry right now. There's so many offshore companies coming in, setting up brokerages, setting up trucking companies, having drivers do these lease purchase rent. I've met drivers that are their company driver, they're paying for the fuel. They have got them doing so many illegal things. It's like a boat is sinking and you're trying to plug all these holes. And we are just not equipped to deal with all the situations happening. We just urge drivers, do not work for a 1099 company. You are guaranteed that you are going to have your checks stolen. So many scams to leave you holding the bag for some really dangerous situations. And I just can't even, there's not even enough time for me to share all of the horror stories that I've had. So we have put some letters out. We have some law firms that we are working with to talk about the independent contractor rule. And, obviously we don't know where a lot of stuff is going to go because of the administration change. And then lastly, I have had some guy, there's so many different driver groups now, but 3 driver groups got a hold of me a couple of years ago, whatever, asked me to sit in on some meeting about the broker transparency. We had this meeting with this Office of Small Business Administration. They said, everything you guys are describing is a antitrust issue. You should write to the Federal Trade Commission. So I had actually met Lena Khan, who is the commissioner of the Federal Trade Commission, at a cocktail party when I was in Washington, D.C. And we had written her about the independent contractor rule, and she knew who I was. She was like, oh, yeah, I'm reading a letter from you right now. I said, well, I just was in this meeting about this broker thing, and it's like antitrust. And she said, well, write the letter. So I did. I wrote the letter. She's probably leaving office now. But right away when the letter got published, it was picked up by some Washington, D.C. circles, and some antitrust lawyers called me right away. And they're like, there's something here, So I'm like, okay, so as a supportive measure, that's not one of our core issues. But there is something there with this broker transparency that really needs to be unraveled, because I have spoken to some shippers about it. And I believe that if we get down to the nitty gritty, we're going to find out the shippers have been paying market rates. And then the brokers are turning around and making the second contract and cutting all the profit out and all the fuel surcharge, and nobody's the wiser. And then listing that load up on the load board for this grossly reduced price, when in fact they are paying over here. So they're like believing that the shippers are believing we're paying, so where's it going? And there's just a lot of people in the industry that shouldn't be. There's a lot of foreign companies, like I said, and I believe that it puts our supply chain at risk when you have so much corruption happening, so much wage theft happening, people just getting a truck. And we're going to have another wave of it, because when the freight slowed down, the complaints slowed down because so many companies are going bankrupt. But as freight picks up, I just got called by USA Today a few days ago because they're doing a whole truck driver shortage.
There is not a truck driver shortage.
They're like,
drives
you
me
talk to us about the
insane.
truck driver shortage. I'm like, there's no truck driver shortage. Yes, I'll talk to you. But you have to understand the ATA does this like every 3 months, and they do it to ramp up. People go to CDL school, get into training. Now you have a low wage workforce that doesn't know what's going on. So it's a mechanism to keep those people coming.
Yeah, and they're overpaying for overpriced this is my rant. I mean, I just did my podcast about this the other day. Overpriced CDL schools that do not give proper training, and then they're coming out with no job because there is not a driver shortage.
Yeah, there's no driver shortage. Then they get them involved in lease purchase. Then they get, their wages stolen. Then they, like it just sets off the whole chain of events all over again. And it's just exhausting to keep up with, like how do you get these people to not do this carrot and stick thing that they do?
From what I heard, the schools are getting grants for the people that they send through these driver mills. And that's my word. That's my statement. That's what I
Yeah,
put in, and I stand by that. They are driver mills.
they're
Um,
CDL mills.
yeah.
The students are their own industry. And I said that in the Dan Rather show back in 2009. That the student trucker industry is an industry within trucking. It's an inner recruiters make money. Recruiters make more money than the drivers.
Yep. Well, they get
Everybody is getting a kickback from getting these people in, and they work cheap. They run the freight. They'll do the team driving. They're making money from the government. Everybody's giving them accolades because they're creating jobs, but there's no tighter retention. Nobody's going and saying, you hired 5,200 people last year, and you're still saying that you have a driver shortage. What happened to those 5,200 people? Like, let's have an audit and find
right.
out what happened to them. And that is just a lot of government waste that people need to pay attention to, because the taxpayers are funding that ultimately. And, and then everybody's like, oh, we're creating jobs. Like, no, you're not. You're creating an indentured servitude operation.
Exactly. Exactly. 100%. That's my soapbox right there. You don't want to get me started because coming in as a driver and being a driver trainer, I have seen some crazy. I had a girl, and she literally didn't even have 3 hours behind the wheel at the school she went to. Her instructor was also her test out, and he passed her knowing she failed and couldn't drive. And this girl almost killed me 3 times in her first hour behind the wheel.
Mm, mm.
She
And
did
there's
not
so
even have the basic tools. She did not have the basic skills down, not even the basic.
I mean, I don't know how this mess, I mean, money, basically.
Mhm.
That's really what it is. That's how the mess has happened. We've
Well,
seen DMVs since I've been in trucking, people getting paid off at the DMV to pass people. Um, Fraudulent CDL is given to people. There was a big bust in Florida a few years ago. A school in Memphis got busted because they were paying people off to pass people that didn't have the skill. So it is a real freaking mess. And then I've
it is.
actually met this Serbian guy who's told me he was brought over here, taught to drive in 2 days, and just doesn't know anything about the regulations, wasn't taught how to park, only to go forward, drive 11 hours, pull over on the side of the road, call this number, and then they give you more hours to drive.
Mhm. Or the Serbian companies who are yeah, and I know a Serbian driver who just worked for a company before he came to where I am, and he was working 2 different clocks. He
Yeah,
was he was
yeah,
team driving as just one person, and it was
yeah,
exhausting.
yeah, 16 hours. And they tell him, I have text messages. One guy shared the text messages. They give him more hours, which is basically whoever it is seats another driver on the ELD and tell him to keep the one person to keep driving. And then they're texting him and saying, if you get pulled over, tell him this is your name and this is how you pronounce it. But they don't know, because the way that they got brought into it from their own community, they don't know the regulations. They were
Right.
not taught that that's illegal.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
not how you're supposed to do it. And you have a right to say no.
Yeah.
And that's why we have a lot of dangerous drivers on the road right now.
True. So you're fighting this is new stuff that you're going to be tackling as well. That's a lot on your plate.
I'm not sure if I'm going to tackle it, but I try to talk to people when I go and do public speaking that are in agencies that have the power to poke around a little bit more and see, oh, yeah, I see it right here. Illinois has a lot of people in there. They need a very big audit in Illinois.
Yes. We are probably the most corrupt state. We had the huge CDL scandal with George Ryan back in the day. Yeah, we are probably the most corrupt state when it comes to that. Um,
Yeah,
it's horrible. So I went to Wisconsin to get mine. I had a great training up at Fox Valley
that's a
in
good school.
Wisconsin. It is. So I did not go through Illinois to get mine. I was well trained. So what else besides you were just in DC? So you travel a lot for this. You spend a lot of time working on the trucking issues. Is there anything else going on in your life besides this, or does this take up all of it?
Right now, I'm pretty much just working all of the time. Um, Working, yeah, I'm pretty much working all of the time right now. There's not a lot of downtime for me. I have a horse.
Aw.
He bucked me off in October. I spent most of October in the hospital with a broken tailbone. He still
Oh,
loves me and I still love him, but I can't ride. I rode on Christmas Day.
oh, that was
Um,
nice. What's his name?
you know, his name is Scout, and he's a beautiful paint. And that's kind of my downtime right now. I love Washington, D.C. I love the conference that I went to. I'd love to get more drivers introduced to going to. It's very expensive, but I feel like there's a lot more value there. There's a lot of people that just are so eager to talk to a truck driver, like they could bear, will you look at this? Does it make sense? So it really makes you feel like, okay, I could do a lot, networking with this group a lot better than going to this other show that's more like junior high school. So, you know what I mean?
We talked about that the other day. We
Yeah.
did, we did.
So I
We're
just,
still going. We're still going though,
yeah.
but you know.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm not going to go to, we're not going to go to Matt's after
Oh,
all.
you're not going this
No,
year.
no, I'm not going to. We just pulled out of it. And the reason why is because the fall that I had is going to cause me to have another surgery, and it's going
Oh,
to
okay.
take place in the spring. And it just wasn't going to be financially make sense for me to travel. There is a documentary out about our work called Driver that premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival in June. We wanted to bring it to Matt's. The filmmaker, I don't know if she still is. Maybe she will. We wanted drivers to see it before it gets on streaming platforms. We do know that MIT is going to be showing it, and they asked if I would come for that.
Is it going to stream anywhere?
It probably will. It just takes time for streaming channels to pick up after it goes on a film festival tour. So it's usually on a film festival tour for over a year before streaming channels start picking up the documentaries that came out. So eventually it will. We did like over 700 hours of filming, and it's a 90-minute film. So there's a lot of content that's not in the doc that I wish was. It's more about like the precarity of the job and us trying to help other drivers, contacting us for help and trying to live our own lives on the road and juggle all of this kind of stuff. But for me right now, I need to like see through a couple cases that we have pending and focus on my job and do the best that I could do, and, we have the thing up looking for board members, and I'm looking at you, Tammy, because I think that you would be a great addition
Tammy
to
sent
what we're
her
doing.
email this week.
Yeah.
She did
Yeah.
after thinking about it.
Yeah, I really, we've had people that want to help, but then there's not follow through or their life gets busy. Some people have gotten, family issues or medical issues that have prevented them from really contributing. And I know more than anyone that trucking consumes your life. Like it's hard to have time for anything else. But if you're going to be in this industry longer and you care about making it better, we have an established voice. We've kicked down a wall that can never be put back up again. And
Yeah,
Idela's.
and you need fighters. You need
We need
fighter. You don't.
fighters
Yes,
that are
yes,
not afraid to tell the truth and aren't going to get wined and dined by another association for 20
right.
minutes so that you'll be silent
Yep.
and then toss you
So
out the back door.
So when you watch this, ladies, and you have had experiences or you've seen experiences and you've dealt with this industry and you want change and you're willing to work to help make that change, you know where to go. You come over to Real Women in Trucking and you tell them, I want to help with change. I want to be a voice. We all have a voice and use it. This
Mm-hmm.
is me using mine. I've been in this industry for 8 years, and if you knew me before, I have a voice. I've always had a voice about women issues. I've always been in male-dominated industries. I was in insurance for years. I've always dealt with male-dominated industries, and when I came into trucking, I'm like, I'm just gonna stay on the back burner. And I was so outraged with the things I've dealt with that finally I'm like, I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm not an overly religious person. I'm Baptist, but I'm going to tell you what. God knocked on my head in a dream one night and he said, "You have a voice, use it." I had a dream about not, and so this is where we're at. And I'm done with just sitting here complaining about it.
Yeah,
So,
that was my thing is everybody's complaining about the same thing. Let's do something. I
yep.
need to find my successor. I can't keep doing this. I turned 60 this year, and I know that if I just fold it up, the other organization will just take credit for a lot of stuff they never did, tried to cover up, continue to try to cover up, and everything will just go on. Now there is a very good study going on right now, but you have to have some outspoken tough women to make sure implementation happens.
Right. You
And
gotta go
that,
past that stopping
yeah.
point of, you want to actually implement. You don't wanna stop at
Mhm.
the where everybody else is stopping. You want to take it. Real Women in Trucking wants to take it farther, and they want to be part of the implementation, and they wanna make
Yeah.
sure that implementation occurs.
And I got to tell you that, last I was in DC for a different conference a few months ago, and I was talking to somebody, and she said, you should really tap into the insurance industry because the insurance industry would care about, because it does have an impact on highway safety. When you have
Right.
somebody that's operating a tractor trailer who's being terrorized by the person that's in there with them,
Mm.
you have a highway safety issue. And so
Yeah.
sexual misconduct and the lack of a code of conduct of the kinds of drivers that we have is impacting highway safety for everyone. And the insurance industry needs to be brought into that circle. So you might be just the person to do that,
Yeah.
Tammy.
Parking inadequacy. That also
Yeah,
is highway
that is
safety,
because,
you know?
yeah, it sure does, because of the cargo theft. Like, why do you give me, a couple $1 million worth of cargo and then tell me to go fend for myself? That's
Or
just
the
like
trucks that
insane.
that are yeah, or the trucks that are parking on ramps, and getting
Yeah,
hit and, it's all part of the same risk management.
yeah.
Yeah, so I can see where insurance companies would definitely play a part in wanting to see some change with
The
that.
The problem lies in the companies that are self-insured that can doctor their crash statistics.
Right, but even being self-insured, they do I mean, there is an insurer backing them up regardless.
So that has to be that is where somebody needs to dig into further that knows the inner workings of the insurance industry.
Yeah.
So
That's definitely interesting. Well, I know we have had a very long podcast. So if
yeah.
Desiree, what's 2025 looking at for you? Anything big coming up that people need to keep an eye out for?
Well, we have some big things that we hope will conclude that I can't talk a lot about
Okay.
in 2025. I hope that by the spring we have some noteworthy news. We'd like to have people, join our fight. use your voice. If that's your superpower, share our news, share knowledge with each other before we get the next wave of new students in, and it starts all over again with people making all the wrong decisions. And that's kind of the big thing, is how do we help people make the right decisions from day one so that they can avoid the obstacles that are in some of these companies that are setting you up to fail. And, we're looking for new leadership. A lot of us want to move on with our life. Deb has taken over a company that is a startup. They're looking for some women drivers that want to drive locally now for medical waste. A couple of other women are retiring from the industry. So we're really looking for more leaders to take over and keep this thing going, to get this industry straightened out.
Okay. And if, like she said earlier in the podcast, if you've experienced any kind of discrimination with the hiring process, please reach out to Desiree or Real Women in Trucking with that information as they are gathering all their data.
Yeah, we really need that information. Recording, if it's legal for you to record, but make notes. Who did you talk to? What did they say? If they sent you emails, said things like, that they have a hold on women, they're not hiring women. I mean, we've seen some things that some of these recruiters have said that are just like, wow, you wrote this,
Right.
in an email, you said this, and nobody seems to know the law anymore in this industry.
Right. Yeah. Well, people just aren't scared of the law anymore in this industry
No,
is the
they're
problem.
not. They're
All
not.
right. Well, we're going to wrap this up. Thank you so much, Desiree, for being a guest on Trucking with Tammy. It has been a pleasure having you on.
Well, thank you so much. I had a good time talking to you, and I am going to follow up with you
All right.
very soon. So
All right.
thanks
And
a
thank
lot
you,
for having
everybody,
me on.
for joining. And you guys have a great day. This is Tammy with Trucking with Tammy. See you on the road.
Bye.